The ping of my phone cuts through the elegant hum of conversation at the Carmel Bay Resort. That sound will forever mark the moment I realize just how little my family values me. I stand alone near a cluster of white hydrangeas, my knuckles whitening around my phone as I read the email notification. Not a delay, not a cancellation, a complete flight itinerary change, to Bali. My family isn't coming to my wedding because they never planned to. The screen blurs as I scroll through details of their spiritual retreat package. My jaw tightens, but I refuse to let tears form. Across the room, Mitchell notices my expression, concern crossing his handsome face as he excuses himself from his groomsmen. Jennifer, our wedding coordinator, approaches with a clipboard in hand. "Lana, we need to finalize the seating for your parents. Do they prefer?" She stops, reading something in my posture. "Is everything all right?" I silence my phone, placing it face down on the nearest table. "They're not coming," I say, my voice steadier than I expected. "They never planned to." Mitchell reaches us, his hand finding the small of my back. "What happened?" I could call my mother. I could scream or cry or beg for explanations. Instead, I reach into my tote bag and pull out the custom luggage tags I designed for them, hand-painted California coastlines with their names in elegant script. The tags I stayed up 3 nights creating, imagining their delight when they arrived. "Bali," I tell Mitchell. "They're in Bali, or on their way there. My sister needed a healing journey after her divorce." The words taste bitter. "Mom's been texting about Dad's back problems while booking spiritual retreats." Jennifer's eyes reflect a knowing look. After 10 years in the wedding business, she's seen this pattern before. Mitchell's face darkens as understanding dawns. "Your father said your wedding was an unnecessary expense, but they found money for Bali?" I nod, throat tight. "For Darcy. Always for Darcy." Mitchell, product designer and problem solver, immediately starts thinking of solutions. I fell in love with his reliability, his steady presence that never wavers. So different from my family's conditional affection. "Your Aunt Sylvia is still coming, right?" he asks. "Yes. The only one who RSVP'd without me having to call 3 times. My great-aunt from Montana, who I see maybe once every 5 years, managed what my immediate family couldn't." The room suddenly feels too warm, too crowded with Mitchell's relatives who flew in from Boston without complaint. People who show up because that's what family does. I had no idea that spending $23,600 on my family would be the best investment I'd ever make, just not in the way I intended, I say, surprising myself with the calculation I've apparently been tracking all along. Jennifer discreetly steps away, giving us privacy while staying within earshot should we need her. Professional to the core. 24 hours until I walk down the aisle, I say, checking my watch. 24 hours to decide whether to let their absence eclipse everything else. Mitchell takes my hands, studying my face. "What do you need right now?" "What I need is a family who values me enough to show up. What I need is parents who don't consistently choose my younger sister over me. What I need is to stop being the responsible one who's taken for granted." Instead of answering, I pick up my phone and open my messages. 3 new texts from Ruth, my mother. "Frank's back is really acting up. We might need to take a later flight." "Darcy's having another breakdown about Eric. You know how she gets." "Don't stress. We'll make it somehow. You always handle things so well on your own." The last one makes me laugh. A sharp sound that startles a nearby server. Mitchell raises an eyebrow. "She's right about one thing," I tell him, showing him the messages. "I do handle things well on my own, always have." I think about the family I've been chasing my whole life. Ruth Whitaker, who calls my career success showing off, while praising Darcy's hourly retail job as finding herself. Frank Whitaker, who bends to Darcy's every whim while scrutinizing my carefully planned wedding budget. And Darcy herself, 31 years old and still redirecting family resources to her endless series of personal crises. Mitchell's mother approaches, her elegant gray bob swinging as she smiles warmly. There you are. The florist wants to know if you'd like additional arrangements at the family table. I open my mouth to explain, but Mitchell gently interrupts. Mom, can you give us a minute? We need to handle something. She immediately backs away, no questions asked. The respect is so natural it makes my chest ache. I should call them out, I say after she leaves. Demand they explain themselves. Mitchell shakes his head. Is that really what you want to spend your energy on right now? The question hangs between us as we stand in this perfect venue that cost us an extra $5,000 because my family doesn't do destination weddings. The Pacific crashes against rocks outside, constant and powerful. No, I finally say. What I want is to get married tomorrow without feeling like I'm still that kid waiting for someone to show up at my piano recital. The weight of disappointment should crush me. Instead, something shifts inside. A lifetime of accounting suddenly balances. Every holiday I flew home while Darcy stayed local. Every tax return I prepared was free of charge. Every family emergency where I dropped everything while they took my response for granted. I straighten my shoulders and look at my fiancé. They made their choice, now I get to make mine. Mitchell's face softens with pride. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. I think of Aunt Sylvia, who mailed her RSVP the day after receiving it, who sent a handwritten note saying she wouldn't miss it for the world. Maybe family isn't always who you're born to. I think we need to talk to Jennifer about rearranging some tables, I say, a new resolve steadying my voice, and about reallocating some funds to our honeymoon. Mitchell smiles, squeezing my hand. I hear Italy is beautiful this time of year. 12 hours before my wedding, while other brides might be enjoying a peaceful sleep, I sit on the hotel balcony with my laptop balanced on my knees. The Pacific stretches before me, moonlight creating a silver path across black water. Behind me, the bridal suite with its king-sized bed and champagne chilling in ice remains untouched. I opened a new spreadsheet. Column headers appear in neat rows. Date, amount, purpose, return on investment. My fingers fly across the keyboard, each click a small satisfaction. First-class flights from Nampa, $4,372. Oceanfront suites at Carmel Bay Resort, $11,250. Whale-watching excursion for Frank's Back, $2,500. Special menu accommodations for Ruth's sensitivities, $1,478. Spa package for Darcy's pre-wedding anxiety, $4,000. The digital ledger grows, illuminated by moonlight, $23,600, almost half our savings, gone to people who never planned to come. My mind wanders back to sophomore year at Michigan. 3 campus jobs, morning barista shifts, afternoon library hours, weekend waitressing, while maintaining my double major and scholarship requirements. Meanwhile, my parents covered Darcy's full tuition at Boise State, even after she switched majors 4 times. Lana always manages, Ruth had said when I called home during finals week, voice hoarse from exhaustion. Darcy needs more support to find her path. The cursor blinks, waiting for more entries. I add them mechanically. 7 years of extended tax filings done for free. 3 family emergencies where I flew cross-country overnight. Financial advice that salvaged their retirement after Frank's disastrous investment in his cousin's alpaca farm. I close my eyes, hearing Ruth's voice critiquing my career choice. Always showing off with your fancy accounting degree, she'd said after my promotion, while in the same conversation praising Darcy's part-time position at a furniture store as entrepreneurial spirit. A text appears on my phone. Mitchell, still awake? Yes, I type back. Balcony. I don't close the spreadsheet when he arrives, barefoot in sweatpants and a faded University of Colorado t-shirt. He sits in the adjacent chair without speaking, following my gaze toward the ocean. I chose California because they don't do passports. I say finally, voice flat. Remember? We wanted Italy, but my family doesn't do international travel, except for Bali apparently. Mitchell reaches for my hand, his touch warm against my cold fingers. I found their confirmation emails. I continued. They booked Bali 3 months ago, while I was sending daily updates about wedding preparations. He stays silent, thumb brushing against my knuckles. I've been building this spreadsheet of everything I've given them. Money, time, effort. Did you know I've handled their taxes free for 7 years? That's nearly $30,000 in accounting fees they've never paid. The waves crash against the shore below us, rhythmic and indifferent to human concerns. I checked into upgrading our honeymoon, Mitchell says quietly. Since we already paid for their rooms, we could extend our stay in Italy by 4 days. The idea floats between us, liberating in its simplicity. What do you need right now, he asks, the question so direct it startles me. I look at my reflection in the darkened balcony door. Was this really where 34 years had led? A woman who'd become a human ATM for people who couldn't even show up for the biggest day of her life? 18 hours until we say our vows, I whisper. 18 hours to decide if I'm still the daughter who accepts leftovers. Sleep evades me. At sunrise, I sit cross-legged on the bed with my laptop open to the shared family Gmail account I'd set up years ago, another service provided free of charge. The search history reveals multiple queries. Bali spiritual retreats. Best healing centers Ubud. Sister healing journey packages. Mitchell appears with coffee from the hotel restaurant, steam rising from white ceramic mugs. He watches silently as I scroll through the evidence of my family's deception flight confirmations, retreat bookings, travel insurance. Did they think I wouldn't find out? I ask, more to myself than to him. People like your family, Mitchell says carefully, don't think about the consequences. They assume you'll always understand, always forgive. I shut the laptop with a decisive click. I'm done calculating my worth to them. Mitchell's eyebrows rise slightly, a question. This wedding was my last investment in a relationship with no returns. I take a sip of coffee, the bitterness oddly satisfying. If they can redirect funds for Darcy's spiritual healing, I can redirect my emotional capital toward people who actually show up. By morning light, my decision wasn't about the money. It was about refusing to start my marriage the same way I'd conducted my entire relationship with my family, prioritizing their comfort over my dignity. The ocean outside looks different in daylight, clearer, boundaries between water and sky more defined. Clarity, after all, comes with a price. Sometimes that price is $23,600 and a lifetime of expectations. I pick up my phone and text Jennifer. Need to discuss reception seating changes. Family table won't be needed. 2 hours later, the ping of Jennifer's clipboard against the reception table cuts through the morning quiet. 7 hours before our ceremony, and the wedding venue has become something entirely different from what I'd planned. Not a family celebration, but an intimate gathering. But each shift of furniture, each crossed-out name on the seating chart, feels like reclaiming territory. You'd be surprised how often we pivot like this, Jennifer says, her experienced hands rearranging place cards with efficient grace. She doesn't ask unnecessary questions as she removes the Whitaker family table entirely. The 10 empty chairs that would have announced my family's absence to everyone now disappear from the floor plan. I stand at the venue's picture window, watching waves crash against Carmel's rocky shore. Their rhythm hasn't changed, constant and reliable, just like Mitchell has been throughout this ordeal. What do you think? Mitchell appears beside me, coffee cup extended. Jennifer says we can upgrade our honeymoon suite with what we're saving on their meals. I accept the coffee, its warmth steadying my hands. The honeymoon we delayed to pay for their flights? It's back on. 4 extra days in Tuscany, he says, not hiding his smile. Vineyard tour included. 4 hours until guests arrive. 4 hours to transform a family obligation into a celebration of choice. The realization hits me like those waves below, powerful and cleansing. I keep wondering if I should feel worse about this. I admit, voice low enough that only Mitchell can hear. Shouldn't I be crying or something? Breaking things? Mitchell studies my face. You've been crying for them your whole life. Maybe you're finally done. The string quartet's arrival interrupts our moment. Three musicians in formal black attire begin setting up near the altar area, followed by a woman carrying a violin case covered in travel stickers. She moves with deliberate care, her silver-streaked black hair pulled back in a simple bun. "That's Cora," Mitchell says, his voice tinged with nervous anticipation. "I hired her as a surprise before. Everything. She's supposed to play during the reception, but I thought maybe—" "She's perfect," I say, squeezing his hand. While Mitchell confers with Jennifer about the upgraded suite, I approach Cora. She's tuning her violin, fingers moving across the strings with practiced precision. "You must be Lana," she says without looking up. "Mitchell told me you appreciate Vivaldi." "I do," I say, watching her fingers adjust the fine tuners. Though we had planned something more traditional for the ceremony, my father was supposed to. The words trail off. Cora nods, finally meeting my eyes. Her gaze holds the wisdom of someone who understands complicated families without needing explanations. "Family's complicated," she says, adjusting her strings. "My father refused to attend my wedding to Maria. Now he sends birthday cards to our twins." The simplicity of her statement without drama or self-pity gives me permission to breathe. She continues tuning, the notes hanging in the air between us. "I could play during the ceremony instead of just the reception," she offers. "Music fills empty spaces better than resentment." Her offer lands like an unexpected gift. I nod, unable to find adequate words. After Cora begins rehearsing with the quartet, I retreat to the bridal suite to finish my makeup. My tote bag sits on the vanity, and as I reach for my lipstick, my fingers brush against something firm. The luggage tags. I pull them out, running my thumb over the hand-painted California coastline I'd spent 3 nights creating. The elegant script of their names mocks me now. For a wild moment, I consider walking down to the shore and throwing them into the ocean. Instead, I open the keepsake box Mitchell gave me last Christmas and place them inside. With a hotel pen in hand, I write on the box's paper insert, "The last investment." The action feels ceremonial, final. When Mitchell knocks and enters, he finds me staring at the closed box. "Everything okay?" he asks, loosening his collar. I show him the box and explain what I've done. "Or," he suggests, the corner of his mouth lifting, "we could use them for our own honeymoon. At least we know they're high quality, you designed them." The unexpected levity breaks through something hard inside me. I laugh, a genuine sound that surprises us both. "You know what?" I say, reopening the box. "Let's do exactly that." I pull out the tags and cross out my parents' names, replacing them with Mr. and Mrs. Green in quick, decisive strokes. The transformation isn't beautiful, the original names show through my hasty corrections, but it feels right, imperfect, and honest. 7 hours ago, I was still trying to make everything perfect for them, I say, holding up the altered tags. Now I'm wondering why I never put this much effort into what we wanted. Mitchell wraps his arms around me from behind, his reflection joining mine in the vanity mirror. "Then let's start now. What do you want today to be?" I turn in his arms, study his familiar face, the slight asymmetry of his smile, the laugh lines forming at the corners of his eyes, the absolute steadiness of his gaze. "I want it to be about us," I say. "Not about who isn't here, but who chose to be." Outside, Cora begins playing Canon in D, the notes rising clear and perfect through the open window. Not the processional I had planned with my father, but somehow exactly what I needed. The waves continue their rhythm below, indifferent to human dramas. They've seen countless weddings on these shores, some perfect on paper, others messy with real emotion. Tomorrow, they'll still be crashing against these rocks, constant as ever. I place the altered luggage tags in my suitcase, already packed for Italy. Let's go reimagine a wedding. An hour later, the ping of my phone cuts through the elegant hum of conversation at the Carmel Bay Resort. That sound will forever mark the moment I realized just how little my family values me. As the ceremony began, I realized 3 weeks of obsessing over my family's travel arrangements had overshadowed the real purpose of this day. The spreadsheet calculations haunted me, $23,600 gone. Nearly half our savings vanished into the Pacific fog like the whales my father would never see. Behind the bridal suite door, I press my forehead against the cool window glass, watching guests settle into white chairs on the lawn below. The empty front row glares back at me, a void where Ruth and Frank should sit. Mitchell's relatives whisper, heads bent together in that distinctive pattern people use when discussing someone else's misfortune. My stomach knots. The bouquet trembles in my grip. 5 minutes, Lana. Jennifer's voice floats through the door, professional and calm. I straighten my spine and adjust the vintage pearl earrings Aunt Sylvia brought this morning. The small jewelry box sits open on the vanity, lined with faded blue velvet. Something borrowed, something very old. Sylvia had said, pressing them into my palm. Your grandmother wore these when she married your grandfather in 1954. She was the strongest woman I ever knew. I touch one pearl gently, imagining my grandmother's fingers doing the same 70 years ago. The cool smoothness grounds me. I secure them in my ears, watching my reflection. The woman staring back looks composed, but her eyes hold a question. How did I get here? In my head, Ruth's voice surfaces, always making things more complicated than they need to be. A soft knock interrupts the thought. May I come in? Mitchell's mother, Caroline, steps through the doorway without waiting for an answer. Her gray bob swings as she crosses to me, hands adjusting the sleeves of her powder blue dress. You look beautiful, she says, her Boston accent making the words sound like a fact rather than flattery. Thank you. My voice comes out smaller than intended. Caroline tilts her head, studying me. Jennifer says your father isn't available to walk with you. The careful phrasing isn't available when what she means is didn't bother to show up. Hits me hard. I nod, throat tight. I heard the violin starting. That wasn't the music we planned. I adjust my necklace, buying time to steady my voice. That's Cora. Mitchell hired her as a surprise for the reception, but she offered to play during the ceremony too. She said something about music filling empty spaces. I say. Outside, the first notes of Canon in D float up from the lawn. Not the processional I'd planned with my father. The substitution catches me off guard. Its beauty is unexpected, unbidden. Caroline watches me, her expressions softening. May I walk with you? I can manage alone. I say automatically, the response of a lifetime. I know you can. She steps closer. But you shouldn't have to. Not today. She smooths an invisible wrinkle from my sleeve. Not to give you away, you've always belonged to yourself, but to stand with you. Something cracks inside me. A dam I've spent 34 years constructing. The first tear slides down my cheek. I'd like that, I whisper. We move toward the door together. I pause at the threshold, summoning the strength I've relied on since childhood piano recitals, where my chair held more family members' coats than actual family. The venue coordinator gives us a nod, and we step outside. Sunlight warms my face as we pause at the top of the stone path. 60 guests turn in their seats. Mitchell stands at the altar, tall and steady, watching me with such naked adoration that my steps falter. Caroline's arm tightens around mine. One foot in front of the other, she murmurs. Just like taxes. The unexpected comparison startles a laugh from me. The sound ripples across the lawn, causing smiles to bloom among the guests. Cora's violin sings, each note clear and perfect. I focus on the melody rather than the empty chairs. 60 seconds of procession that rewrite 34 years of conditional love. When we reach Mitchell, Caroline squeezes my hand before placing it in his. The simple gesture, this transfer of support rather than ownership, brings fresh tears to my eyes. You're here, Mitchell whispers, his voice catching. I'm here, I confirm. present in this moment, not lost in tallying absence. When the officiant asks who gives this woman, Caroline answers clearly, she gives herself, with the blessing of those who value her. Behind us, Aunt Sylvia nods firmly, dabbing at her eyes with a lavender handkerchief. Mitchell takes both my hands in his. His thumbs trace small circles on my skin, a private language we've developed over 3 years together. I steady my breathing, matching his rhythm. Lana, he begins, his voice carrying across the lawn. I promise to create a home with you built on honesty and respect. He pauses, swallowing hard. Family isn't who shows up when it's easy. It's who stands beside you when it's hard. The words wash over me like the waves crashing below on caramel rocks. I glance at our guests, seeing not empty chairs but the faces of people who chose to be here. Mitchell's college roommate who flew in from Tokyo, my colleague Diane who rearranged 3 client meetings, Aunt Sylvia who navigated 2 flight connections despite her arthritis. When my turn comes, my voice emerges steady and clear. Not a hint of the shake that normally appears when I speak of family. Mitchell, I promise to value presence over perfection, to remember that truly showing up is the foundation of love. The weight on my chest lifts slightly as I speak truth instead of platitudes. If you've ever had to redefine family at the altar, you know exactly how liberating it feels. We exchange rings, simple bands that hold more meaning than the elaborate family heirlooms Ruth once promised would be mine when the time comes. After the pronouncement, Mitchell kisses me with unexpected gentleness. His hands frame my face as if I'm something precious. The guests applaud, and I turn to face them as Mrs. Lana Green, a name I chose, not one I was given. At the reception, glasses clink against tables as Mitchell's father rises for a toast. His voice, gruff with emotion, carries across the terrace. To chosen family, and to boundaries that make space for joy. I lift my champagne, meeting Aunt Sylvia's eyes across the room. She raises her glass in return, a silent acknowledgement passing between us. The twist of obligation tightens in my stomach again, but today it competes with something new, the certainty that I deserve more than leftover love. 6 days into our Tuscan honeymoon, I sat on a vineyard terrace, finally ready to address the messages accumulating from Idaho. The sun cast long shadows across terracotta tiles as I stared at my phone. 27 text notifications, 16 missed calls, 5 voicemails. Mitchell returned from the villa kitchen with 2 glasses of Chianti. Are you sure about this? We could pretend their phones don't work in Italy. If only. I accepted the glass, my thumb hovering over Ruth's name. They'll just keep escalating until I respond. The first message appeared. Did you get our pictures from Bali? Mom says you're not responding. Darcy's casual tone made my fingers tighten around the stem of my glass. The next 3 were from Ruth. Why aren't you answering? We had connection problems in Bali. Did something happen at the wedding? The audacity. My voice came out flat, stripped of inflection. They're acting confused about why I'm not responding. A woman's voice came from behind us. Family problems don't respect vacation time, do they? I turned to find an elderly Italian woman, her silver hair gathered in a loose bun, carrying a bottle of wine. Her bangles clinked against the glass as she set it on our table. You look like you need this more than my other guests. Her English carried a musical Italian lilt. I'm Eleonora, this is my vineyard. Mitchell started to decline the extra wine, but I touched his arm. Something in Eleonora's knowing eyes suggested understanding. Thank you. I gestured to the empty chair. Would you join us? Eleonora settled into the seat, the gold bangles on her wrist catching sunlight as she poured. Americans on honeymoon, yes, but with clouds in your eyes. I nodded, surprised by her directness. My mother gave me these when I cut ties with my brother. She tapped her bangles against her wine glass, creating a delicate chime. Said every time they sound I should remember to choose peace. My throat tightened. What did your brother do? He took and took. Money, time, forgiveness. Eleonora shrugged. Some wells run dry. Mitchell squeezed my hand under the table. The vineyard stretched before us, neat rows of grapevines cascading down Tuscan hills. For the past 6 days, we'd walked those hills each morning, my steps carrying me further from obligation with every sunrise. We'd taken cooking classes in the evenings, learning to create pasta from scratch, building something together instead of fixing others' problems. 8 days until we returned to Denver. 8 days to decide what boundaries looked like in practice. Eleonora leaned forward, noticing my grandmother's earrings. Those have stories in them. She gestured to the vintage pearls. Your grandmother, was she also a strong woman? I never knew her. I touched one earring. My Aunt Sylvia brought these to the wedding. She said my grandmother would have wanted me to have them. Keep those close. They connect you to the right kind of family history. Eleonora stood, bangles jingling. The wine is a gift. For courage. After she left, I opened Ruth's texts again. Pictures of Bali flooded my screen. Frank meditating at a temple, Darcy doing yoga on a beach, Ruth beaming in a flowing caftan. The accompanying message read, "Wish you could have experienced this with us. Such a spiritual awakening for Darcy after that awful divorce. When you're done being upset, we should talk about planning a family trip here next year." My hand shook. Mitchell read over my shoulder, his breath catching. They don't even acknowledge missing the wedding. His voice held quiet disbelief. I set the phone down and took a long swallow of Eleonora's wine. They never will. That's who they are. The realization settled over me with strange clarity. For years, I'd interpreted their behavior as misunderstandings, poor timing, or unfortunate circumstances. Now I saw the pattern with merciless precision. Every instance of choosing Darcy, every dismissal of my accomplishments, every extraction of my time and resources without reciprocity. I picked up my phone and typed, "I hope your healing journey was worth $23,600 and missing my wedding. We'll talk when I'm ready." My finger hovered over send for 3 heartbeats before pressing down. The phone immediately lit up with Ruth's call. I silenced it. "I've never seen you set a boundary with them before," Mitchell said, studying my face. "First time for everything." I leaned back in my chair, surprised by the calm washing through me. The anger remained, but now it felt clean, purposeful. We sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank lower. Mitchell refilled our glasses from Eleonora's bottle. "I've been thinking about your company's expansion," I said. "The Boulder office is moving to Seattle." Mitchell nodded slowly. "Johnson mentioned they're still looking for team leads. What would you think about applying?" The words fell easily, unburdened by the guilt that would have accompanied them a week ago. "Seattle's pretty far from Idaho." "Exactly." The corner of Mitchell's mouth quirked up. "You're serious?" "My mother always claimed I moved to Denver to abandon them." I took another sip of wine. Might as well give her something real to complain about. For the first time in days, we both laughed. Later that night, after Mitchell fell asleep, I stood on our private terrace. My phone buzzed with yet another call from Ruth. I switched it off completely and tucked it into a drawer. The Tuscan night enveloped me, stars bright above the vineyard. Eleonora's bangles clinked in my memory. Some wells run dry. All my life, I'd been the responsible one, the fixed point around which my family's chaos orbited. The reliable daughter who could handle things on her own, who didn't need attention or support because she was so capable. I touched my grandmother's pearls and wondered what stories they held, what boundaries she might have set if given the chance. 8 days of freedom stretched before us. 8 days to imagine a life built on choice rather than obligation. In the distance, I could see lights from Eleonora's villa. I lifted my glass in silence, thanks to the stranger who recognized what I needed to hear. The family we choose matters more than the family we're born into. Tomorrow, Mitchell and I will look at property listings in Seattle. 2 weeks after returning to Denver, I stood outside my childhood home in Nampa, wondering if this visit was a mistake. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the familiar lawn where I'd once built snowmen and practiced cartwheels. My rental car idles at the curb, Mitchell waiting patiently behind the wheel, his presence a silent promise that I wouldn't face this alone. "I'll be right here," he said as I closed the car door. His eyes held a mixture of concern and resolve that steadied my racing heart. I approached the house where I'd spent 18 years before escaping to college. The path felt shorter than I remembered. My hand brushed the weathered oak of the porch railing, muscle memory guiding me to skip the third step that always creaked. Today, I planted my foot firmly on that step, letting it announce my arrival with a loud groan of protest. The sound of laughter filtered through the partially open windows. Sunday dinner in progress, unaware of the storm about to walk through the front door. I didn't call ahead. After 34 years of predictability, I figured my family deserved a taste of the unexpected. The door wasn't locked. It never was on Sundays. I stepped into the entryway, the scent of pot roast and cinnamon apple pie hitting me with a wave of nostalgia that threatened to soften my resolve. From the living room came Darcy's voice, animated and carefree. "And then the monkeys just showed up on our balcony. Mom freaked out, but Dad started feeding them bananas from the breakfast tray." I followed the sound to find my sister center stage, as usual. The living room had been rearranged since my last visit, now dominated by a larger television where photos of Bali's lush landscapes cycled across the screen. My parents sat on the new sectional sofa I hadn't seen before, their attention fixed on Darcy as she flipped through digital photos with theatrical commentary. This temple was incredible. Ezra had some kind of spiritual awakening there. Darcy zoomed in on a photo of her boyfriend gazing soulfully at an ornate stone structure. The energy was just so pure, nothing like the commercial tourist traps. My mother leaned forward, her face alight with the same admiration she never quite managed when looking at my tax practice certificates or MBA diploma. "That's beautiful, sweetie. I'm so glad we could be there for your healing journey." "Money well spent," my father added, his posture relaxed in a way it never was when discussing my wedding budget. I cleared my throat. 3 heads turned simultaneously, expressions morphing from surprise to something more complicated. Dad straightened his spine, shoulders tensing like they did when preparing for a confrontation with a difficult client. Mom's smile froze, then melted into a brittle version of itself. Darcy's eyebrows shot up before her features settled into practiced indifference. "Oh, hey," Darcy said, pausing the slideshow on a sunset beach photo. "How was the wedding?" 30 seconds of silence followed while I decided whether to explode or maintain dignity. My fingers found my grandmother's pearl earrings, touching them for strength. The weight of them grounded me, a reminder of the woman Aunt Sylvia said never tolerated disrespect. "Mom, Dad, Darcy," I said, my voice steadier than the trembling in my chest suggested. "We need to talk about what happened and where we go from here." Dad waved a dismissive hand. "Nothing to discuss. We couldn't make it. These things happen." His eyes didn't quite meet mine, focusing instead on a point just above my left shoulder. "These things don't just happen," I replied, remaining in the doorway rather than entering their circle. "They're choices. Choices made long before you booked those Bali tickets." Mom stood, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her slacks. "Would you like some coffee?" I just made a fresh pot. Her default response to tension offer refreshments. Change the subject, avoid the core issue. "No thank you. I didn't drive all the way from Denver for coffee." "Well, you could have called first," Darcy muttered, closing her laptop with unnecessary force. "Some of us have plans tonight." I ignored her, keeping my focus on our parents. I spent $23,600 on flights, accommodations, and experiences for you. Not because I wanted to show off my success, but because I wanted you there on the most important day of my life. Dad's face flushed. "Now see here, we never asked for any of that fancy stuff." "You're right. You didn't ask. You complained about the location being too far, the accommodations not being convenient enough, the flights being at uncomfortable times." So I fixed everything, made it perfect, and removed every possible obstacle. My voice didn't rise, but each word landed with precision. Mom stepped toward me, hands fluttering like nervous birds. You've always been able to handle things yourself, Lana. Darcy needed this trip. The divorce has been so hard on her. And my wedding wasn't important? That's not what I meant, Mom backpedaled. But you have Mitchell and that beautiful life in Denver. Darcy's still finding her way. At 31, my sister was apparently still entitled to unlimited finding of ways, while I had graduated to handling things myself somewhere around age 12. I came here hoping for an apology, I said, taking a step back toward the door. I can see that was unrealistic. The silence thickened, heavy with unspoken justifications. Ezra wandered in from the kitchen, a cookie in hand, oblivious to the tension. He nodded at me with casual recognition before the atmosphere registered on his face. Aunt Lana, why are you crying? Is it because we went to see monkeys instead of your party? I touched my cheek, surprised to find it wet. For all my practiced composure, some truths bypass our defenses. Something like that, Ezra. I answered, offering him a smile that cost me more than the first-class tickets I'd purchased for the people in this room. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt other grown-ups. I reached for the doorknob. I'll see myself out. Behind me, my mother called my name, but I was already crossing the threshold, stepping over the memories and expectations scattered like landmines across the porch. Mitchell was out of the car before I reached the sidewalk, arms open, no questions asked. I need to see Aunt Sylvia, I told him as he guided me to the passenger seat. She's the only real family I have left in Idaho. As we pulled away, I didn't look back at the house where the people who should have loved me most had taught me the precise value of my place in their lives. The next day, the ticking of Aunt Sylvia's grandfather clock punctuates the silence in her living room. 24 hours after walking out of my parents' house, I sit curled in the corner of her floral sofa, hands wrapped around a chipped teacup that's older than I am. The clock marks time in a house where history is honored, not weaponized. Your grandmother, me sister, would have been ashamed of Ruth's behavior. Sylvia's voice carries the weight of decades as she pours tea into mismatched cups. Her weathered hands tremble slightly, but her gaze remains steady. Frances never tolerated that kind of disloyalty. I touch my grandmother's pearl earrings, cool against my earlobes. I barely remember her. She remembered you, left those earrings specifically for you, not Darcy, not Ruth. Sylvia settles into her armchair, joints creaking like the floorboards of this century-old Boise home. Said you had the backbone the others lacked? Outside, rain taps against the windows, gentle, persistent, cleansing. Unlike the hot, dry climate of Nampa just 30 miles away, Boise offers a buffer of distance and different weather, a meteorological boundary between who I was yesterday and who I'm becoming today. My laptop sits open on the coffee table, the draft email to the extended Whitaker family glowing on the screen. I've rewritten it 17 times since midnight, stripping away accusations until only facts remain. The spreadsheet attachment speaks loudly enough. 3 columns of numbers spanning 15 years of financial support, family emergencies, and one-sided giving. You don't owe them explanations, Mitchell says, looking up from his phone where he's been checking flight times. But I understand why you need to give them. His understanding is why I married him. No demands for me to just get over it, or accusations that I'm making things complicated. Just quiet support as I dismantle the scaffolding I've built around a family structure that was never slidens, betting nace a place in structure. Stable. I need coffee, I announce, standing abruptly. Real coffee, not tea. Sorry, Aunt Sylvia. She waves a dismissive hand. There's a French press in the kitchen. Frank gave it to me 3 Christmases ago when he couldn't think of anything else. Never used it. The irony doesn't escape me as I find the unopened box on a pantry shelf. Another gift given without thought, collecting dust. I focus on the mechanical process of measuring grounds, heating water to the precise temperature. Numbers and procedures make sense. Family doesn't. When I return to the living room, Sylvia has moved to sit beside my laptop, glasses perched on her nose as she scrolls through my spreadsheets. $73,412, she says without looking up. Total financial contributions over 15 years, not counting your time or expertise. Mitchell whistles low. The wedding was just the final 23,600, I add, setting the coffee tray down. A drop in the bucket, really. Send it, Sylvia says, tapping the screen. Then we're going to talk about your future. One click. That's all it takes to dispatch 15 years of receipts to aunts, uncles, and cousins who've watched the Whitaker family dynamics play out at reunions and funerals. Not to publicly shame my parents and sister, though the evidence does that effectively, but to explain my upcoming absence from family gatherings. The relief is immediate and physical, like setting down a heavy suitcase I've been carrying across multiple terminals. 1 hour until our flight back to Denver, Mitchell reminds me gently. 1 hour to say everything that needs saying. The knock at the front door comes exactly when I expect it. Ruth Whitaker has never been able to resist confrontation when her image is at stake. I'll get it, Sylvia says, moving with surprising speed for a woman in her 70s. You decide if you want this conversation. I stand and smooth my slacks, feeling the weight of my wedding band against my finger. I do. My mother's voice carries from the entryway tight, controlled, the voice she uses for church meetings and neighborhood disputes. Sylvia's responses are too low to hear, but within moments, both women appear. Ruth looks smaller somehow, standing in Sylvia's living room in her beige cardigan and sensible shoes. Her hair is freshly colored, the same honey blonde she's maintained since her 30s, but new lines bracket her mouth. You've embarrassed the entire family, she begins without greeting. No hug, no acknowledgement of Mitchell, just immediate offense. That email was completely unnecessary. Hello to you too, Mom. I gesture to the sofa. Would you like to sit? She remains standing, arms crossed. You're punishing us because we couldn't afford an expensive trip. The laugh escapes before I can stop it sharp, incredulous. Couldn't afford it? You were in Bali, on a spiritual retreat package that cost more than your flights to California would have. Darcy needed. Stop. The word slices through the air between us. I know exactly what the retreat cost. I know you used the frequent flyer miles I helped Dad accumulate through his business. I know everything, Mom, because I'm the one who's managed your finances for years. Her face flushes. That's not fair. No, I agree. It hasn't been fair for a very long time. Mitchell stands beside me, a silent sentinel. His presence steadies me as I open my laptop and turn it toward her. This is the balance sheet of our relationship. Every loan, every gift, every financial rescue I've provided since college. I scroll slowly, letting her see the meticulous documentation. The $23,600 I spent on tickets and rooms you never used? Consider it my final contribution to this family dynamic. Ruth's jaw tightens. So this is about money? How typically cold of you, Lana. This isn't about money. It's about value. I close the laptop. You've shown me exactly how much you value my milestones, my marriage, my place in this family. Outside, a car horn honks twice our taxi to the airport. We're moving to Seattle, I tell her, the words tasting like freedom. Mitchell's company is expanding there, and I'm opening my own tax practice. Aunt Sylvia has asked me to handle her estate planning and investments going forward. Ruth's expression shifts as the implications sink in. For years, I've been the family financial advisor, the one who finds deductions, manages investments, and smooths over Frank's financial missteps. Now that resource, like my wedding attendance, will no longer be available. I suppose you've made your decision then. Her smile is tight, mechanical. I didn't make this decision, Mom. You did, over decades of choosing Darcy's wants over my needs. Mitchell collects our bags, while Sylvia hands me a small package wrapped in tissue paper. For your new home, she says. Something that belongs with you. The taxi honks again. Ruth watches this exchange, something flickering behind her eyes, regret, perhaps, or simply calculation of what this estrangement will cost her. With Darcy's constant financial crises and Frank's retirement investments needing management, the practical impacts will become apparent soon enough. "When will you be back?" she asks, voice smaller now. I shoulder my bag and meet her gaze directly. "I don't know that I will be, Mom, but Aunt Sylvia has my number if there's an emergency." In the taxi, 5 minutes later, Mitchell holds my hand as we pull away from the curb. Through the rear window, I watch my mother standing on Sylvia's porch, a diminishing figure against the pale blue siding. "Are you okay?" Mitchell asks as we turn the corner. The tissue paper package sits in my lap, still unopened. Inside, I suspect, is another piece of family history that Sylvia has rescued from oblivion, something my mother would have given to Darcy without thought. "No," I answered honestly. "But I will be." The numbers in my head are finally balanced. The ledger is closed. 6 months after moving to Seattle, Mitchell and I stood in the rain watching movers unload furniture into our craftsman bungalow. Water darkened the cedar shingles to the color of wet coffee grounds. A moving man cursed as the corner of our dining table caught on the porch railing. "Should we help?" Mitchell asked, his glasses speckled with raindrops. I shook my head. Let them earn their tip. The words came easily now, without the reflexive guilt that once would have sent me rushing to assist. Our bungalow sat on a gentle slope overlooking Puget Sound. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, with a converted sunroom that would serve as my home office. Floor-to-ceiling windows faced west, framing water and mountains in equal measure. The realtor had called it aspirational pricing until Mitchell's promotion and my new client roster made aspiration reality. Water trickled down my collar as I followed the moving crew inside. The heart pine floors gleamed under temporary work lights. In the kitchen, our coffee maker already sat plugged in atop granite counters, Mitchell's first priority whenever we traveled. "Your desk goes by the windows," the lead mover called, gesturing toward my office space. "The water view, right?" Right. The word caught in my throat. A tax advisor with a water view. So different from the windowless cubicle I'd occupied in Denver, or the corner of our apartment I'd claimed for weekend consultations. Mitchell squeezed my shoulder, his palm warm against my rain-chilled skin. "Room to breathe, Lana, room to grow." The movers deposited my desk exactly where I'd envisioned it. Antique walnut with clean lines and brass drawer pulls. I'd found it at an estate sale in Boulder during our final weeks in Colorado. The elderly seller told me her mother had used it to write letters to soldiers during World War II. "Strong women need solid foundations," she'd said, patting the desktop. By afternoon, rain still drummed against our new skylights, but the moving truck had departed. Cardboard boxes crowded each room, their contents scrawled in my precise handwriting. Clothes, kitchen, books, office supplies, the language of transition. I sat cross-legged on our mattress. The bed frame would be assembled tomorrow, and opened my laptop for the weekly video call with Aunt Sylvia. Her face appeared, slightly too close to the camera as always. "There's my girl. How's the new house?" "Wet," I laughed, "but perfect." Sylvia adjusted her reading glasses. Behind her, I glimpsed familiar floral wallpaper and the corner of a crocheted afghan. "I've been thinking about your proposal," she said. My heart quickened. 3 weeks ago, I'd suggested she consider selling her Boise house and relocating to Seattle. A guest house stood at the back of our property, small but comfortable, with a private entrance and garden. "And?" I kept my voice neutral despite the hope blooming in my chest. "My friend Marge thinks I'm crazy to leave Idaho at 78. Sylvia tilted her head. "But she also thought Gerald Ford would make a great president, so her judgment has always been questionable." I laughed, recognizing the deflection tactic that ran in our family. "What do you think, not Marge?" "I think," she said slowly, "that I'd like to see the Pacific Ocean more than once before I die, and I think the chosen family deserves proximity." The phrase chosen family warmed me like good whiskey. "The guest house needs fresh paint," I said, "but the garden gets morning sun." I'll need to list my place first. She straightened a stack of papers visible at the edge of the screen. Which reminds me your mother called yesterday. My shoulders tensed automatically. And? She wanted to know if I'd spoken with you about Christmas. I told her I had my own plans. Sylvia's eyes, the same hazel as mine, softened. She sounded disappointed. I nodded, swallowing the reflexive guilt. 6 months since I've talked to any of them. Are you okay with that? The question hung between us through miles of fiber optic cable. I glanced toward the bathroom, catching my reflection in the mirror above the sink. Same features as always. Same chestnut hair now curling from the damp air, but the eyes had changed. They no longer searched for approval from people incapable of giving it. I said, surprised by the certainty in my voice. After finishing with Sylvia, I wandered into what would become my office. Rain pelted the windows with gentle insistence. I opened the single box I'd unpacked earlier, the one marked personal. Inside lay a shadow box containing my grandmother's pearl earrings, a wedding photo, and the note from Sylvia that had accompanied the family heirloom. I hung it on the wall facing my desk, a reminder of heritage that transcended disappointment. Later, as twilight merged with rain clouds, Mitchell and I sat on cushions on the living room floor, eating takeout Thai food from paper containers. Got an email from Cora today, Mitchell said, reaching for more pad thai. The violinist? From our wedding? He nodded, wiping his mouth with a paper napkin. She found a photo while putting together an album for her business. Thought we might want it. He handed me his phone. On the screen, a perfectly framed image showed us during our first dance. My head tilted back in laughter, Mitchell's eyes focused entirely on my face. Neither of us were aware of the camera. Neither of us noticed the conspicuously empty chairs where the family should have sat. Cora's message read, "Found this while creating an album for your anniversary, though you should see what real partnership looks like." We should frame this, I said, touching the screen gently. Mitchell nodded. For the office? By your desk? Perfect. Outside, Seattle rain tapped against our skylight, steady, persistent, cleansing. In 30 days, I would launch my financial planning service for women rebuilding after family financial trauma. 30 days to transform my experience into something that might help others set boundaries around both money and love. The woman I'd become sat on the floor of her new home, surrounded by cardboard boxes and possibility, and finally understood the truth. Family isn't determined by whose blood runs in your veins. It's created by those who show up when it matters. Sometimes, the family we build matters more than the one we're born into. The rain continued falling, washing everything clean.